Well, greetings and welcome back, friends, to our Wednesday video podcast edition. We're so glad that you're here with Steve Autrey, Paul Thompson at Huntersville United Methodist Church. I hope that you all had a really good Sunday at Denver United Methodist Church. I'm going to anticipate we had one as we're filming a little bit ahead. But the conversation on Sunday was
full of hope right now.
Full of hope. I know. There's always hope.
Yes, we hope.
So we started the conversation with Jesus says, I didn't come to abolish the law. I came to fulfill it. And so Jesus saying that, we had to look at the law. What is the law? What was he talking about? And it turns out he's talking about the entirety of the Old Testament, this old covenant that God has made. And covenant is all about relationship. The relationship between God and human beings, the relationship God expects between other human beings. Well, then today we start to flesh that out a little bit. Jesus gives 4 different ways that he came to fulfill the law, to call us to a higher level of righteousness besides just a basic, I lived the letter of the law. So I'm going to ask you, Steve, to begin the conversation today as we look at the first one of those when Jesus talks about this idea of anger and hatred, of which you are very familiar.
More so than you realize. So I'm going to read from Matthew chapter 5, 21 through 26. You have heard that it was said, to those of ancient times, you shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you, that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, you fool, you will be liable to the hell of fire. So when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First to be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are on the way to court with him, or your accuser may hand you over to the judge and the judge to the guard, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly I tell you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny.
Wow. So let's unpack that a little bit, Steve. Let's begin with this whole idea.
Do we have to?
Yeah, that's pretty painful. This begins with a formulaic saying. Jesus often would say, you have heard it was said to you, but I say to you this. So here Jesus begins with that formula. You've heard it said, but I say to you. When he says you have heard it said, he is basically quoting the law, or he is referencing the law that they would have understood it.
And we should know this part of it. I mean, the law is expansive in first century Judaism, 613 specific laws. But at the heart of the law, the beginning is the Decalogue, the 10 sayings, the 10 commandments. One of those is you shall not murder. Yeah. You shall not kill.
We often talk about that one as if it is do not kill. It really doesn't mean there should never been. As Ecclesiastes says, there is a time to kill. But this is referencing a very special thing when you are taking the life of another person, not justified. It is, if it's war, sometimes maybe war is justified, sometimes defense is maybe justified, but this is you have murdered someone.
Well, it is, I mean, that Old Testament, right? And so, but Jesus sets a new standard in the New Testament. Mm-hmm. And this is part of Jesus setting a newer standard, again, that higher form of righteousness, that higher form of being God's person in the world looks like this. Mm-hmm. And gosh, this is hard to do. Anger is real.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go far to find an immense amount of anger in our world. And it is killing us, right? So when Jesus is saying, do not be angry, what's he trying to get to?
Well, I think we also have to separate. Anger is an emotion that's not all bad. Jesus gets angry at the temple when he sees them. They've taken the house of worship and they've turned it into their own little economic system that benefits them. Jesus is angry and he drives them out.
But he's angry at a condition,
right?
Not an individual person, Right.
And so the Bible also says, don't let the sun go down on your anger, which means, again, anger may be something that we're all going to experience, but it's what we do with it. In this particular case, Jesus, however, says that this anger that you hold on to, this hostility that you build up.
But he goes on to flesh it out a little bit, right? It's like, if you insult a brother or sister, you'll be liable to the council. And if you say, you fool, you will be liable to the hell of fire, right? It's, he is, what he's talking about there is, and this is from someone smarter than me, it's contempt. It's destroying someone with your heart and mind, making them less than you and maybe even less than human. We don't have the right to take someone else's humanity away. Yes, people may trigger our anger, it may flare up, but you don't have any right to destroy them. You don't have any right to break them. And that's often the response we get to anger is, I'm gonna take you apart, I'm gonna make you hurt, I'm gonna make you suffer, I'm going to embarrass you, I'm going to hold contempt for you.
Yeah. And that anger and hostility is so prevalent in our day and age, and it manifests itself in so many unhealthy ways. It manifests itself as racial prejudice, racial anger, as hostility towards people who don't look like us, who don't think like us, who don't act like us. And I think at the very heart of what Jesus is saying is that is a way of murdering people. That is a way of making them less than human.
Right.
That is a way of taking away we're made in the image of God.
And it's so important to Jesus that we reconcile. See, it's not just don't be mad, it's don't let this fester, don't let this go on. Go to them. And he says, if so, when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, and this isn't family, this is brothers and sisters, we're all brothers and sisters, leave your gift there. In other words, make this the top priority in your life to reconcile. It's more important than worship, right? So that's an act of worship, going to the altar. Well, suspend your act of worship. Suspend worship. So is Jesus saying that it's a higher priority to reconcile with people than it is to go to church? It sure looks that way.
So in other words, next time we come to church, we're going to come to the communion table, or next time we're going to have our time of worship, maybe there would be a situation in which we'd say, I'll be back in a little bit, and we go find that neighbor that we've had a fight with. We'll go find that boss or that person who we felt mistreated us. Maybe we find that person who votes against us politically and doesn't agree with us, and we've been mean.
Yeah, that neighbor who puts all their yard signs up.
Yeah. Maybe we find a way to find a way to reconcile that relationship, to put it in the right order, so that we can then come to God with that clean conscience and with that deep sense of we've done the work we need to do.
And if you notice what Jesus is doing, this stuff gets to the heart of who we are. And I think this goes back to fulfilling the law of that Jesus came, because this takes transformation. This isn't just following a rule, right? It's not just reciting a creed. It's not getting the answers right on the Jesus exam. This is about fundamentally being changed and being challenged to change from the inside out.
Yeah, it's not maintaining the letter of the law. It's maintaining the spirit of the law. And I think Jesus is calling us to that higher righteousness. He says to us in this previous passage, he says, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees. Well, the only way to do that, they were champions at living out the letter of the law, but not so good at living out the spirit of the law. Jesus is calling us to live letter and spirit, and trusting Him to say, this is what it really means to do that.
Right. So this is challenging. The next several verses, all of the Sermon on the Mount is challenging. It's meant to push us into different moral and ethical territory than we would certainly ever want to go on our own. But it is part of our transformational journey with Jesus.
And today being Ash Wednesday, I think is particularly appropriate for us to reflect on this. You know, the ashes are a reminder of our mortality. The beginning, Ash Wednesday, is the beginning of the season of Lent, which is a time of self-reflection.
Yes.
It is a time for us
self-examination
to consider.
and repentance, which means take a deep look at who we are, what we really value, what we really believe, and examine the places where it doesn't align with who Jesus is, and change that. Be about changing that.
So we've begun today with this conversation around anger, hatred, and murder. So tomorrow we'll get into a whole new subject that Jesus raises.
So just for a plug here, Denver, tonight's service is at 7 o'clock for Ash Wednesday. Our Wednesday night Bible studies bumped up to 6 p.m. Bible study 6 p.m., Ash Wednesday service at 7.
Yeah, I'll actually, when you're watching this, I'll be in Israel. So with our group from our church, but Tosh Jenkins, Pat McHugh, Charles Morrow will be leading a service at Huntersville United Methodist Church. We'll have pancakes available from 5:30 to 6:30. The service begins at 7 p.m. I hope that you'll find an opportunity to come and have those ashes imposed, because that's an important mark for us.
All right, thank you, and see you tomorrow.